was born in 1973, the year John Cappelletti won the Heisman Trophy. John Cappelletti's younger brother, Joey, died of cancer. Brian played for Penn State and wore John Cappelletti's same number 22. He was named by his mom, Fran, after Brian Piccolo of the Chicago Bears because she loved the movie Brian's Song. And I think you know that Brian had cancer. And it was after Brian's junior season. He was the best running back in the state of Pennsylvania. Brian thought he had a pulled muscle, and he went to see the doctor, and we learned he had a tumor the size of a grapefruit attached to his heart. Well, I was a young sportscaster, Mike was a young sportscaster, and what we wanted to do was get the story. And we didn't know how to walk into a hospital and say, we need the interview, the story. So I didn't bring a camera. I brought an autographed jersey from Dan Marino, and I think a football is what it was, and I never asked for an interview. A couple days after, Brian's mom called me and said, Brian wants to talk, but Mike, I don't really want you to approach football because we don't know if Brian's gonna live. So if you had told me 23 years ago that we'd be standing here tonight at the Save an Eye game, because this is the game where he returned to football after cancer, to talk about Brian, I might say, yeah, we'll be talking about him, but I never thought he'd be here to tell the story with us.
But he says, if we strive for perfection, we are going to gain excellence. And that is Brian Milne in a nutshell. See, he was and is a man who strives for perfection. And he hasn't caught it yet, but he has achieved excellence. Excellence on and off the football field. It's my pleasure to present to you our speaker of the evening, Brian Milne.
It's an emotional time for you. I'm at peace with God, because I can run again.
He used to say Friday night is the best night of the week. And to this day, I still agree. He's right. When I first came to Cincinnati, I lived there, played for the Bengals. And not many people know this, but I would drive. I would just drive. I don't know where I was going, what I was doing on Friday night, but I would drive until I saw lights. And it was a football game. And I would pay my $2, $5, whatever it was, sit in the stands. I would sit alone. I would listen to the parents, the friends, loved ones, watching the game. I wouldn't say much to anybody because at that time I was a professional athlete. I played for the Bengals. I really didn't want the attention. I thought it was a way to see and learn the city because I got the call to play for the Bengals in one day. The next day I drove to Cincinnati. I did that until I earned the starting fullback position for the Bengals. And it didn't take long after that that my visits on Friday nights were shortened. He taught me the value of prayer. Before the games, he would say, you can't ask God to win. It's not fair to God. And if the other team did, well, I'd put God in a bind. For the last 10 years or so, I've been a youth football coach. I actually turned down a university position to coach little kids. For the most part, I would coach the running backs and the quarterbacks. It's what I knew. And I actually found it funny a few years ago when I was calling the play, the influence Coach had on me. We were driving the ball just like we're supposed to. I grabbed my fullback, around his neck. I said, had my script, and I said, okay, I write X zoom, 40X slant on 2. Get in there. At that point, you look back and you know what you've become and you know that it's good. I actually want to share a story I don't think anyone knows that would have changed whether or not I'd be standing here tonight. A story that I believe only Coach Chesman and I know of, and I don't think he's told anyone, and neither have I. It was when I was told I was not allowed to play in the Save an Eye game. As everyone knew and knows, I missed my senior year at Fort LaBeouf. I was sick. I promised Coach Chesman I would run for him. I gave him my word. When I was honored and named to be on the All-Star team, I made a trip to Penn State, the place I'd spend the next 5 years. At the time, I drove a 1973 old Cutlass Supreme, and gas was $1.20 a gallon. Excited, I drove to Penn State to tell my new coach, Coach Paterno, the good news. Well, to put it mildly, Coach Paterno was not enthused with the idea of me playing in the All-Star game. Also being selected to the Big 33 game, he thought I would be less of a target. I said, Coach, I ran the ball 50 times in one game. I think I'm used to being a target. Coach Paterno said, no, you're not playing. It's too much of a risk. You're at Penn State. I left his office in tears, and I went back to Waterford to tell Coach Chesman. And I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. I caught Coach up at the upper field. He was going into the locker room, and I stopped him. I said, Coach, I don't know if I can play for you. Coach Paterno has a problem with it. And he stood there, he looked down, he looked at me, and he said, it's okay. He talked about my path and my future at Penn State, and he said it was okay. At that point, I got a little angry. Got back in my car, drove back down to Penn State, and saw Coach Paterno. I told Coach Paterno I gave Coach Chesman my word. I gave my word I'd play for him, and I need to play for him. And after a few minutes or so of me trying to make Coach Paterno realize how important this game was to me, I left with a different purpose. I drove back to Waterford, told Coach things had changed, and I'd be able to run for him. And that's how it happened. So, to the young men and women in the audience tonight, if you make a promise, keep it. If you give someone your word, stand by it. To me, I've always believed you're only as good as your word. So if you make a promise, you tell somebody you're going to be there, you give them your word, do it. Speaking of a promise, another coach by the name of Joe made a promise to me that changed my life. Joe Paterno. Since his death, I've been contacted by many media sources, and up until now, I've been silent and cautious. In a few words, at the worst point of my life, Joe Paterno said, come to Penn State, regardless of whether or not you play, just get here. So I've decided to write a book about the ups and downs of life so far. Having cancer as a kid, Penn State, the NFL, really everything. It will be a tell-all, but it will be a book I'm hoping young people will read when things get rough or they sometimes don't think they can go another day. Have a great game. And as Phil Knight said, do right and fear no man. Thank you.
Great Yo, show out, boys. Let's go, baby. Hey, we only get one shot to play in this game. Think about what this game means to every single person in this stadium. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Brian gave that jersey many years ago to McDowell's Sean Gallagher, one of tonight's players. Recently, every player in this year's game signed that jersey, and tonight we think it is time it goes back where it belongs. To you, Brian, because of the wonderful example you have set